I found myself on an empty desert road with the sun setting fast. I've been driving all day to nowhere in particular. I'd hoped I would reach a city or small town to stop and rest sooner, and didn't really want to drive all night. For hours, I didn't see any signs of life besides a car or two going the other direction. I lived on the road, in constant motion for a few years. I no longer kept track of how long I've been at it. My hair is starting to turn gray around the edges since I started my new lifestyle, making me wonder if I'll ever be able to stop and settle in one place. I started to get tired. When night fell and with no sign of a city or rest stop, I debated on if I should just pull over for a quick nap. I honestly didn't remember the last time I stopped for anything besides a quick meal. I needed to sleep soon. So far, I hadn't seen too many cars, but didn't want to risk someone's life by getting in an accident because I was too tired to drive. By some luck, I spotted a sign off in the distance, glowing beside a long empty road. When I got closer, I realized this motel wasn't locked, but rather it appeared for one wary driver. Being on the move as often as I was, I've seen things. Most things people would never believe in, but on long roads, strange things tend to happen. Some of these things didn't have names or labels. I started to make notes of what I came across in case I could help out others, warning them away if needed. I called these kinds of random encounters pop-up motels. They looked as if they belonged to the 60s or 70s. The neon signs buzzing and giving off an eerie pink light that almost appeared to be a color you couldn't describe if you stared at them for too long. They didn't take cards, so you needed to pay in cash, or any jewelry you wanted to give up for a night's rest. Most of these motels were a half square of rooms, all the doors looking out in the empty courtyards. If you find one of these motels with a pool, it's best to keep driving. Nothing good comes from a pop-up motel with a pool. They only appear to those who need a rest and is without any other options. All the other rooms will be empty, but you'll always get the same room number. The clerk is silent, a younger man with blonde hair and a pale face. He moves slowly, handing over the key to room 10. I've stayed at these motels before without too many incidents. I just sleep for the night, return the key, and leave in the morning with the building fading off in the distance. I forgot my cell phone charger in my room the one time and doubled back to get it only to find an empty lot. I hope the next person to use room 10 needed a phone charger. At times, I might come across a hooded figure standing beside an ancient soda vending machine. The front plastic cracked and bubbled hard clear buttons stick when pressed. At least each can only cost $0.25. I paused, looking at the person hidden under layers of dirty clothing. I've met him twice before and gave him $0.25 for a drink. The darkness hid his face, but I thought he appeared happy by the offering. He quickly got a cold can and hurried off into the darkness and deeper into the empty desert landscape. I put my own change in and found he bought the last root beer I wanted. It happened the last 2 times as well. Every time I pick a different soda, and he always buys the last one. Smiling to myself, I picked a regular off-brand soda to take to my room. I didn't bring a change of clothing or anything else besides a drink to the room. I didn't want to forget something again and lose it forever. I took off my shoes and laid on my back over the top of the sheets. The room smelled musty, almost earthy, but a bed was better than sleeping in my car. At least the room appeared clean, and I've never had any issues with bugs in the pop-up motels in the past. I drifted off quickly, being totally exhausted from the long day. Who knows when I last slept? With my hands resting on my chest, I fell into a deep sleep for a few hours. I didn't even set an alarm to wake up in the morning. In the middle of the night, my brain pulled me from my rest, confused on why I suddenly needed to be awake. I'd fallen asleep so quickly and so deeply, I wasn't that groggy when my eyes opened. I looked around the dark room, not moving my head or anything else, sensing something off. The neon light blinking slowly outside and coming through the thin curtains. The smell crept into the air, causing my body to tense. I knew the smell. Sharp air making my skin crawl. It was almost sweet under the hints of earth and rotting. The smell of death mixed with something growing in the dark. Heart racing, I knew I needed to turn my head. Whatever was in the room with me noticed I woke up. no way to avoid what would happen in the next few seconds. I needed to face it head on, and hated it. My hands shaking, clasped together, and head moving as little as possible. My eyes traveled over to my right side, already knowing that someone else laid on my bed. My throat went dry, seeing the shape in the faint pink neon light. The face had been covered by a white cloth with mold growing through it, the fabric clinging to the rotten skull underneath. I knew that there was always a risk of encountering something supernatural in a pop-up motel. So far, I'd been very lucky. That night, my luck ran out. The shape turned its rotting head, and if it had a nose, ours would be touching. In a flash, the thing got on top of my body, pinning me to the hard mattress. The entire body almost rotted away, the skin replaced by splotches of mold and rot. The hands made of bone, only held together by the mold wrapped around my wrist painfully. I got one hand free and pushed it against the exposed ribcage, trying to get the rotten body off me. Through my fear, I found myself thinking the body almost looked beautiful in a way, the colors mixing well in the odd light coming from the outside, revealing delicate lines and shapes flesh normally covered. The hands wrapped around my throat, cutting off my train of thought. I kicked and thrashed, trying to get free. I was going to die in that room. I knew that for certain, but hated the feeling. Death hurts. It always hurts. Most times I fall into a cold darkness that I feared I would never come out from. My hand caught the cloth covering the skull of a face, tearing it off. The creature didn't release its grip from my throat, and even in such a predicament, my mind went blank at what I saw. Set in the left eye socket was a false green eye made of glass. It sparkled in the dim light, matching the colors of the rest of the body so well I couldn't help but want to reach towards it. My palm landed on the cheek of the skull, startling the creature. I was terrified in that moment. Who wouldn't be? This thing could easily break every bone in my body 10 times over. Being strangled to death was a kindness, but my cross-wired brain accepted the fear, along with the sudden admiration of the face looking down, meeting my eyes for a brief moment, the fingers lifting long enough for some raspy words to get out. "You're beautiful," I told the monster and meant it. I don't know if my tastes became warped after I started living on the road and dealing with supernatural creatures. I could have always been like this, and never became aware of it until I came across the things that lurked in the night. Most of the time, the creatures didn't know how to respond to the compliment. A great deal of them acted poorly. The rotten, moldy body got over the shock, and the hands went back to my throat. I really wasn't into that kind of thing, but accepted being strangled over what else the corpse could do. The edges of my sight growing hazy, and spots starting to dance over my eyes. In a brief moment, I saw the monster for who they'd been in life. A man, burned on the left side of his body, and so many failed surgeries leaving the skin appearing distorted. The untouched part of his face any model would be jealous of. The contrast of his scars against his handsome features made my heart flutter for a second, then it slowed to a stop from the lack of air reaching my lungs. I have a strange ability of cheating death. I don't know how. It just happens on the rare occasion I die, which has been happening much more often as of late. I wake up when the sun rises, whole and uninjured. If I broke my arm, I could in theory kill myself and wake up alive and well the next day. I've never needed to take my own life, and prayed that day never came. To be honest, I never found out why I'm able to come back to life, and I'm perfectly content not looking for answers. After being strangled, I woke up on my back, gasping for air, reeling from the experience the night before. The phantom pain in my throat remaining, causing my hand to rub at the spot. I knew no bruises remained, but my mind fooled me into thinking some damage lingered. Still, I could have stayed dead. Waking up with some pains was preferable to the alternative. Risking a glance over, I saw the rotten body from before, the white cloth over the face again, and hands folded neatly on his exposed ribs. The mold growing in a way that made it appear as if he hadn't moved since he died. I sat up, but didn't leave. I couldn't bring myself to. This person died alone and rotted away without anyone finding them. The idea hurt my chest. Using the room phone, I called in a few favors from someone I knew who dealt with this sort of thing. Then I carefully placed my hand over the corpse's bony fingers, silently promising I wouldn't let him be alone again. I called in a pair of agents that respectfully collected the body. I left the room with them following behind the stretcher and the black body bag that held the one I found. When I left the room, I saw I was no longer in an empty desert, but within the middle of a city I didn't recognize. My car parked out in the motel courtroom, and onlookers peeking out from the curtains to see what all the commotion was about. The pop-up motel rooms connected to an empty motel room available anywhere in the country, sometimes even further than that. The window shows the motel you arrived in, but inside the room is somewhere else. I never got disconnected from the pop-up motel before. At least it was kind enough to bring my car along to wherever I ended up. The agents listened to my story and nodded, taking notes. They found out the man was named Michael Burr. He rented out the motel room for at least 6 months. His bank account charged a special rate each month, a rate that him and the motel owner agreed on without any issues with payment for all that time. After renting the room, he sealed it up, put the heat on, and took enough sleeping pills to not wake up again. I asked about why he might do such a thing, and the agents shrugged. I researched myself and found out that Michael had been a dancer, and breaking out to be an actor when an accident burned his face and body. He recovered physically, but mentally could never get over his new reflection. His marriage broke apart and family grew distant. After the accident, there wasn't a single person in his life to tell him his scars made his face even more beautiful. Maybe that was my own tastes talking. Regardless of my own preference, I wished there had been a person who stayed by his side, no matter what he looked like. If someone did, I would not have found a body that night. I thanked the agents for coming out and dealing with the body. Neither knew why the rotten body got back up to strangle the one who made a mistake of sleeping on the bed, or why I was sent to the room after I had fallen asleep. Sadly, I found when it comes to supernatural occurrences that things just happen. I wanted to believe the pop-up motel sent me to that room knowing one lonely corpse needed company for the night. I also found out later that his family cremated Michael's body. I wondered if that was something he wanted, or if it was just a cheaper option for them. He might not have thought much of his body rotting away in the ground, or leaving his scarred face behind in the world. Still, I wasn't a part of his life. I didn't have any right of being a part of his death. I did what I could for him. That needed to be good enough.